This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
With new developments in the property issue in Cyprus, we look in depth at what's happening at the moment.
I think the property issue now is becoming much more important, and it's actually costing money on both sides of the green line. If it's costing money, then that will make the authorities focus on this potential liability in the hope that this abuse of property will become a reason to start thinking seriously about solving the property issue under the Cyprus problem, even though an overall solution to the Cyprus problem has not come. We really have to manage this issue.
And we'll have a taster of next week's programme with a snippet from my chat with one of the members of the Freedom Flotilla. The European Court of Human Rights earlier this week ordered Turkey to pay compensation for moral damage to the Cypriot company KV Mediterranean Tours Limited for the loss of use of their property. Joining us to discuss this property issue once again is human rights lawyer Achilleas Dimitriadis. Achilleas, I think it's thanks to the work that you did on this case, and it follows on from the Titina Loizidis case many years ago, that you've got this ruling. Will you explain what it means?
Well, thank you very much, Rosie. Very kind of you to say that, and very kind of you to invite me. This case is important because Turkey has been found liable for violating the right to property of this company. This company has a 10-story block in the fenced-up area of Famagusta on the beach, and it has 20 apartments. And since 1974, it has not been used. So the company in 2004 went to the European Court, exactly as you have said, on the Loizidou principle, and tried to vindicate its rights. Unfortunately, in 2010, the Dimopoulos judgment, which said that the Immovable Property Commission of Turkey had been set up and people should first go to the IPC before going to Strasbourg, was activated, and therefore all these cases were thrown out. The company continued its effort and went in 2011 to the Immovable Property Commission in occupied Nicosia, claiming loss of use and requesting the return to its property in Varosha. The IPC was dragging its feet, to say the least, and by 2017, that was 6 years later, it was obvious that they were not getting an effective remedy, and therefore applied once again to the European Court of Human Rights, saying that our right to property has not been vindicated, we have been delayed, there is no compensation, what is going on? Hence the judgment we got, which confirmed the company's position, found that their right to property was violated, and awarded at this initial stage only 18,000 for moral damages and costs, but also directed that within 3 months of the case becoming final, the parties should file their claim for just satisfaction. That means that we have to prepare a valuation report, which will say that this block of flat would fetch so much between this period of time, so much is the interest, and give a lump sum for the claim for loss of use that was the result of this building being part of the fenced-up area of Famagusta and depriving the company from the enjoyment and the use of their property. So we are at that stage now. We're more than halfway through in the sense that the violation has been established. Some quantification for moral damages has been given, but the bulk of the case is the amount of compensation compensation to be paid from 1990 to 2025, which is 35 years of loss of use, because that's really the essence of the matter.
How do you come to a figure for that sort of thing?
Well, that's an existentialist question, Rosie. I mean, if we could come to a figure that both sides would accept, that would be the solution to the property issue. And you rightly hit the nail on the head, because there are two approaches to this. We, as Greek Cypriots, say that the value of this block of flats and the loss of use should be calculated on the basis of, say, a block of flats in Protaras on the beach or in Paralini, and the numbers there are very high. On the other side, the Turkish Cypriots will say, oh, well, that's not fair. You should calculate it on the basis of the current prices in the occupied areas. So take, for example, in Salamis or in Trigomo, a property that is on the beach. How much would that fetch? And the question is, in the occupied areas, the amount is much less. In the areas under the control of the Republic, the amount is much higher. And the question for the court is to decide where within this margin they have to draw the line and award compensation, because it is a fact that these people have been dispossessed from 1990 to 2025 today, and they should be compensated. I use the period of 1990 because that's when Turkey accepted the compulsory jurisdiction of the European Court of Human Rights, and that's from where one is entitled to claim damages in Strasbourg. So for 35 years, we're looking for the rent of 20 apartments plus interest as the measure of the damage that these people have suffered. And in addition to that, the company is claiming restitution. They want their property back.
I was going to come to that, because these rulings do not impinge on any way on the legal title holder of these properties, do they?
Well, the point here is that it has been recognized, even by the Immovable Property Commission, where the applicants have resorted, even though there was delay, and the European Court, that KV is the owner of the property on which the block of flats rests. Therefore, they are allowed to certain rights, and these rights have to be vindicated. And we have proven that. These rights have been violated, and now they want their property back. And the fenced-up area of Famagusta is extremely interesting because there is no competing interest by a current user. Normally, in the occupied areas, you would find a person saying, I used to live in Limassol. I was part of the exchange of populations that took place, if that can be used as an expression. I was taken to Kyrenia. I was given a house that belonged to a Greek Cypriot. Well, I had to live somewhere, and that house became mine. And after 50 years, I don't want to live from that, and it's mine. That's an argument. I don't accept it, but it's an argument. In Famagusta, in Varosha, in the fenced-up area, this argument does not work. Why? Because Famagusta is fenced up. There is no current user, so there is no competing interest by someone who is using your property. So theoretically, you should be allowed back your property. Now, of course, there's a political decision, and the fenced-up area has a lot of political charge to it. But legally, I could argue with good chances of success that if there's nobody using the house or the building, or for that matter, the property, why can't it be returned to me? And I think it's an important argument, because the loss of use claim is for the past, the restitution is for the future. And Varosha is special because there is no competing interest from any current user.
No, that's because it's a military zone, I think they call it, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, you've seen Varosha. I mean, I'm sure you visited. You're only allowed into a certain area just to see the rest. This block is on the beach. It's in an area which is inaccessible. It's just standing there waiting for the owners to return and to be given to the rightful owners, which are defined by the certificate of ownership issued by the Republic of Cyprus.
Now, I want to ask you as well about the IPC, because there are, I believe, a lot of claims outstanding, and presumably if they've also been taking as long as your client in this case, then other people will be going back to Strasbourg to say it doesn't work.
Absolutely, and other people have gone back to Strasbourg, and I can tell you for a fact that 10 cases, which I know of, on exactly the same principle, are pending. I think the point is a little bit big, has to be made in a bigger sense, in the big picture. I think the IPC has been accepted by the European Court as not being contrary to that convention. But that's only half of the story. The other half of the story is that, yes, it has been accepted, but it also has to prove itself. It has to prove that it's effective. It has to prove that the procedures go quickly. It has to prove that it pays compensation. And even if deals have been made for over €500 million, of which about 350 to 400 million have been paid, the European Court clearly stated at the end of the judgment that this is not good enough. Payment of these amounts is not good enough. There were more than 8,500. 1,700 cases have been settled. There's about 7,000 cases pending since 2005 that the IPC has been established. This is very slow. This does not meet the European standard of a fair trial within a reasonable amount of time, and that's why this company has won its case in Strasbourg because of the delays, because of the inability of the IPC to award compensation and have a due process. And this is really what the court is telling Turkey. Get your act together, because so far it's not. And the supervising body for this is the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe, which meets 4 times a year. And it so happens that on the 10th, on the 11th, and on the 12th of June, a closed meeting is taking place in which not only the Xenides Arestis group of cases, these are judgments that have been awarded and Turkey is failing to pay, but also the interstate application, the property leg, will be examined by the Committee of Ministers exactly to identify whether the IPC is of a standard that is acceptable, to see if it is effective. And the judgment of the court is clear. It is not. And that means they have to get their act together and fix this matter and deal with all the cases that are pending.
And what action, if any, can the Ministerial Committee of the Council of Europe take, depending on, obviously, the outcome of their discussions?
Yeah, well, the ultimate they can do is ask for Turkey to be thrown out of the Council of Europe. I don't think that will happen. I mean, it didn't happen in the Kavala case. Mr. Kavala has been imprisoned in Turkey, and there have been various resolutions. There is political pressure, and I must say that the political pressure is bearing fruit, because we have the Immovable Property Commission. There have been awards to the tune of €500 million. People are taking this compensation. It's better than nothing. It's not up to standard, but at least there is a way forward. And what's interesting in the KV case is that it will establish a precedent on the amount of compensation that will be awarded. And this precedent could very well be used by others who have applied to the IPC and their properties in the fenced-up area, because it will create a benchmark which can be utilized accordingly.
Now, we have to come to something we have discussed again in the past, I think, and that is Turkish Cypriot properties in the areas controlled by the Republic of Cyprus. 2 reasons for asking you this. The first is that the Nicosia mayor came out this week and said that the authorities here should expropriate most of the Turkish Cypriot properties in the old town. What is the legal situation there? Because we discussed, I think, in the past, the fact that if Greek Cypriots are going to the IPC for their properties in the north, then we have had some cases of Turkish Cypriots taking the Republic to the courts to get their properties back. There was a case, I think, in Larnaca, and I'm sure there are several in Paphos.
Oh, absolutely. And not only have they taken the Cyprus government to the Cyprus courts, I know for a fact that there is at least one case before the European Court of Human Rights which will actually test the legality of the guardianship law, which is the law that empowers the Minister of Interior to manage or protect the properties of the Turkish Cypriots until they return after the solution to the Cyprus problem. So on our side, in the Republic, we have not taken over the properties. They don't belong to the Republic of Cyprus, whereas in the occupied areas, the constitution of the subordinate local administration purports to become the owner of the land, and we are being called as the previous owners, whereas in our case, the ownership still rests with the Turkish Cypriots, but we have not set up an immovable property commission to allow for such claims. And if the mayor of Nicosia talks about expropriation of Turkish Cypriot properties, that legally is correct because these properties belong to Turkish Cypriots. The question is, if they are expropriated, at what compensation will that be done, and whether this compensation will be put in a separate fund so that when Turkish Cypriots return and the Cyprus problem is solved, they will be allowed to take this money. Or we may, for that matter, give them this money because we are taking away their property. See, I think the property issue now is becoming much more important, and it's actually costing money on both sides of the Green Line. If it's costing money, then that will make the authorities focus on this potential liability in the hope that this abuse of property will become a reason to start thinking seriously about solving the property issue under the Cyprus problem, even though an overall solution to the Cyprus problem has not come. We really have to manage this issue because property is very close to a lot of people, and action must be taken to allow people to enjoy the peaceful use of their properties, and that is not being done because both Greek Cypriots are using Turkish Cypriot property and Turkish Cypriots are using Greek Cypriot property. One is 3 times the other, and of course the magnitude is much bigger, but in terms of human rights, this is a violation on both sides of the Green Line.
So now let's come to the fact that on Tuesday, Erhan Arikili, I think he's the transport minister of the occupation forces, he said that they would begin to issue arrest warrants for people that they accuse of using Turkish Cypriot property in the Republic without the original owner's consent. Now that flies into what we were just talking about in terms of expropriation, but also, I presume, all the properties, for example, in Paphos, we've been hearing about people paying peppercorn rents and so on and so forth because they've been given use of the property. That's another spanner, surely, in the works of the whole thing, isn't it?
Well, this is a quasi-legal reply to a political problem. I mean, the problem is that the property issue is part of the Cyprus problem, and sides are using legal means to entrench their position. On our side, we're initiating criminal litigation against people who are using Greek Cypriot properties in the occupied areas, and now they are trying to do the same. I don't think they will have the success we had because I don't think their administration is recognized. I'll be very surprised if Turkey takes this on, it will be, of course, a major escalation in the legal battle that is taking place, which only leads us to the obvious need to have a political solution to the property issue. And please note, I talk about the property question because solving the whole of the Cyprus problem, I think, is a long way down the road.
Yeah, I just can't get my head around how all of these things seem to suddenly be coming into play at the same time. And we've seen the pictures of the huge developments in the north, funded very often by foreign investors. Now, anything that you want to say about that?
Well, I mean, bottom line, money talks. And if you take that, and you find people that are using other people's property without paying rent, that is not allowed in our legal system. And I think that's the basis of it. It's just that it has taken a lot of time for it to mature, and so far, people were enjoying the other side's property essentially rent-free. They took it over in 1974. They have been using it. From the Turkish Cypriot side, they claim it's their property, and of course they have not expropriated, and they have to pay loss of use and compensation. On our side, we say that the Turkish Cypriots are still the owners, but I haven't really seen the account where the money that has been collected for the use of this property has been deposited.
That's what I was going to ask you. Sorry to interrupt, Achilles, because the fact of the matter is that according, I think, to the Guardian of Turkish Cypriot properties, the use of those properties is generating, however small a rent, if you go by today's prices. And what's happened to that money? It hasn't been passed on to the Turkish Cypriot owners of the properties, has it? So surely they can come back and say, well, I haven't had the use of my property.
Well, just as we are claiming loss of use, they are entitled to the same claim for loss of use. The problem is that there has been use by other people's properties without paying the appropriate rent. And that is going to be the problem. And I think this is what is surfacing now. And people are beginning to realize that this is actually going to cost a lot of money. And we should somehow find a way to sort it out, be that exchange, be that sale of the land, but we really have to deal with the property issue on a timeline unrelated to the timeline of solving the Cyprus problem, because clearly the Cyprus problem is not going in parallel with the needs of the people who have been dispossessed since 1974, if you're Greek Cypriot, and sometimes since 1963, if you are Turkish Cypriot. So I think the time has passed, and 50 or 60 years is a lot of time not to be able to use your property. People are waking up to the possibility of legal actions that will generate cost for the government that is abusing your property right, and this has actually surfaced the property issue with a speed much higher than that of solving the Cyprus problem. So in a way, one aspect of the Cyprus problem, by necessity, will have to be sorted out sometime before the overall solution is brought about. And that's because people care about their property and people want to arrange their affairs before they depart. And I think that's only fair.
Well, Mr. Arikli also said that the echo of the steps they're going to take will be different, but no one will be able to blame us. When we open Varosha, no one will be able to ask, why are you opening it? That's a real tough cookie for a Greek Cypriot to swallow, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you will recall the arguments about Varosha that will happen through the presidential campaign and even before. What's the plan of action that the Cyprus government has if Varosha opens? And I think the time is fast approaching for the opening up of Varosha, and only people that have applied to the IPC for their property in Varosha will have a chance to claim it, because if they do not apply to the IPC and Varosha opens, they will not be able to make a claim, and the Turkish side will be able to say, we've had an IPC here since 2005, you have not bothered to apply, so why should we do anything about your property? We will give it to investors, and of course when the solution of the Cyprus problem comes, we will give you your money. This is where it's going, and that's why a political settlement of the property issue is urgent, and these threats that are being used, I think, are not without foundation, and we have to get organized to do it, to defend it. What will you do if Varosha opens up tomorrow and you haven't applied to the IPC? How are you going to make a claim that that property belongs to you if you had 20 years to apply? These are real issues that people are not considering for whatever reason, and I'm not going to go into that.
Well, I was going to ask you whether the reason is because successive governments have been telling property owners in Varosha and anywhere else that they should not apply to the IPC.
Well, that may well be one of the reasons, but at the end of the day, it's your property and you have to take your decisions. You do not depend on the government if somebody comes and takes over your flat. You call the police and you chuck them out. In this case, you have to take some action. Obviously, it's much more complicated. Obviously, it costs money. But you should, again, ask your lawyer what you should do about this, because you have an obligation to your parents or grandparents who have given you this land to ensure that the next generation will either get it back or at least secure compensation in lieu of getting it back.
And are you aware as to whether or not there has been any, even tiny change in the government view on this, or are they still telling people that they should hang on and it's un-Cypriot or whatever else they said it was to apply to the IPC?
Well, the affairs of government in Cyprus still remain a mystery to me, so I really won't comment on that one.
Fair enough. Achilles, it's a real muddle for me and people who are not legal eagles, but you are, and you always seem to manage to untangle all the knots. Many thanks for your time on the programme again this week, and we'll wait to see what the Council of Europe comes up with. Many thanks.
Thank you, Rosie. Keep well.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
That's about all we've got time for this week, but I wanted to squeeze in a quick trailer, which I hope will mean you'll join me next week, because this morning I had a very long chat to Baptiste Andre, who was on that Freedom Flotilla boat to try and break the siege in Gaza. This is just a taster for you. We'll have the full interview next week.
Actually, we were sailing on the night between Sunday and Monday. It was 2 or 3 in the morning. Everything was dark, and the soldier take the control of our boat with 10 warships and 80 soldiers on military. So it was really violent. It was an aggression. Nobody was hurt, and it's important to say that on the boat. But the images that the army show from this arrestation is a staging. It's a big staging, because we should have to take the sandwich and the bottle, but we didn't eat and drink them. We should have to because of the guns that the camera of the Israeli army do not show. It's that every soldier point gun when they give us food or water. So we didn't eat and drink their food and water, and we only take our food that we hide in the boat before the interception.
Baptiste Andre safely back on French soil after being forced at gunpoint for the sake of a promotional film to accept a sandwich and bottle of water from Israeli troops when they boarded the Madleen as she tried to break the siege in Gaza. You can hear the full interview on next week's podcast. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.